Yeah, so my presentation today is about living off the grid. So the first thing, oh, did Sandy get booted off? Oh, here she comes back on. First thing to know is that while I live in the Twin Cities, I have a cabin way up in the Arrowhead, in this little tiny piece of Minnesota. I am where the Grand Portage State Forest. This is my spot, and Superior National Forest, this lighter green, come together. Grand Marais would be down here someplace halfway between Grand Marais and the international border going to Thunder Bay is a little town called Hovland, which I think many of you have been to. Right here at the Judge Magny State Park is the Nanabushu Historic Lodge that dates back to the 20s, and I think many of you have been there. And right here where it says elevation 2169, although my lake is not shown on this map, that's where I am. So where I actually am is kind of over the 2169, but I didn't want to put the red star there. And my property abuts up to the federal forest line, but this is, Boundary Waters 3 miles to the North Canadian border, 6 miles as the crow flies, kind of in the middle of nowhere. I did a little map quest from Grand Marais up to my place, and I usually say it's an hour past Grand Marais. Now, MapQuest said an hour and 13 minutes, but I don't think it's quite that long. But what you should realize is that from Grand Marais to Hovland is 17 miles at 60 miles an hour posted, and people go 65. So let's say make that in 15 minutes. The rest of the time going in is what takes all the time. First 3 miles are paved road. Then it goes to the Arrowhead Trail, which is posted at 40. Some people go faster, some go slower. Then I turn in on Irish Creek Road, which slows down to about 15. And I hang a right on Tom Lake, over on Powers Lake, up Devilfish, and then down on Esther Woods Trail. And every time you go on to one of the smaller roads, the roads get worse. The gravel gets makes your travel a little slower. So by the time you get in, I suppose you could go 15 or 20 miles an hour, but it's rough on your car. So I'm cruising in at about 10 miles an hour. So just to kind of give you an idea of where I am. Also to point out that power lines, apropos to this conversation, run up and down the shore. And at the time that I built the cabin 15 years ago, they extended 3 miles to where the paved road was, but that was it. So I was a good 15 miles inland from any power line. So the lake is called Esther Lake. It is, it's almost entirely undeveloped state forest. Behind this dead tree, oh, look at that, the moon. Behind this kind of dead tree is a state campground with 3 campsites. And up here you can see an old-time fire tower. So this is the 5th highest point in the state. This is 2163, and Eagle Mountain, our high point in the state. Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 2310. So within spitting distance. My neighbor across the lake told me that this is the highest elevation lake in the state, but I've since found one over near Eagle Mountain that's higher. Suffice it to say, it's 2,000 feet in elevation, about as mountainy as Minnesota comes, and a pretty special place and remote. This is from my end of the lake. So this is the other end of the lake, kind of looking down. This is there's an arm that goes to the north here for a half mile, and then there's a larger bay here, and then I'm kind of down under here. So this is, it's a pretty special place, you guys, because there's really no development on it, and it just feels like the Boundary Waters. And this is my little cabin. So when we built, I think we had, my former partner, Matt, and I had the idea of building something with no running water and, you know, gas or liquid propane lighting and an outhouse. And maybe it would be a little bigger, but that was the plan. And then a couple of key things happened. Number one, my mother said, when you have a toilet, let me know, then I'll be visiting. And if there's no toilet, I'm not coming. And number two was we were visiting a neighbor. The closest neighbor to my place is about 2 miles. And she had a laptop on her table. And I said, well, Jan, how, like, do you charge it in the city? And she's like, oh no, we have electric. I'm like, well, how do you have electric? Well, we have a couple of solar panels. Well, you don't have internet? She said, oh yeah, we have internet. I'm like, well, how do you have internet? She said, satellite internet. That single conversation sent me down this path of exploration. And I met with a number of people who specialize in solar power in the very northern latitudes where there isn't a lot of sun through a lot of the year and whatnot. But what I learned is it is completely possible to run a household on solar power, even as far north as we are. I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone if I said I lived in Tucson and I was living off the grid. Plenty of sun, never any clouds, no winter, no snow, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it is surprising to many of my family and friends who have visited to see that all of this is running off of solar. So let's see. It's the inside of the cabin. I'm going to give you a little tour. You're here for solar, but I'm giving you a tour anyway. So that is, I'll talk about heat source, but this is a wood burning stove with an electric fan that's run off of solar. That is the only, that's one major heat source. The other is in floor heating that I'll talk about. Other than that, no furnace or anything like that. The porch is through here, that's outside. This is the main living area, 2 bedrooms up and 1 bedroom down plus a bath. And just to point out, this is a fully functioning cabin. Microwave oven and stove, dishwasher, electric fridge, albeit solar friendly. My coffee pot that I set on my timer every morning so that I can wake up and not drag myself around until I get my first caffeine. A chest freezer, washer dryer. I'll talk more about this photo in a bit. This is an air exchanger, which brings in the winter, it would bring very cold air in and circulate it around so you get kind of fresh air throughout the building without losing a lot of temperature. If you open the window, you're working very hard to keep the heat in a structure like this. Very highly insulated R86 foam or something. And so the problem with that in the winter is, or the colder months is, if you want some fresh air, you're undoing all of the work you're doing to keep the heat in. So this guy circulates air and just brings it in. And I think it's 94% efficient, meaning it keeps the air at 94% of the heat in the building while exchanging it. So I don't use it often, but when I do, it's pretty handy. And this is my little well in the backyard. Super exciting and fabulous, but it gives me fresh water. So, internet, wireless internet, printer. And then I'm coming back to this photo because here's on the roof here, here's my satellite internet. So fully functional cabin, way in the middle of nowhere. I've had people from, like a guy who painted the place for us or put the septic in for us or the electric, and everyone is astounded that this structure is so far out in the middle of nowhere. And I think it's just a tribute to the fact that it is possible. And in this whole, in the whole current discussion about power, moving to electric. Can we do it? How could we possibly do it? I'm here to tell you that you can do it, and it requires some accommodations. But I kind of think of it, here, where's Jane? Is she here? I kind of think of it sort of like vegan eating. You make accommodations and you know that it works. So there are 2 solar systems at play that I researched and invested in. Number one is the solar electric, and that's on a pole up here on the hill. And the second is these guys. These are solar heating panels. And I did a close-up so you can see, whoops. Oh, you know what, I'm going to come back to my close-up. So let's start with the solar electric. I'm going to give you kind of a rundown on the solar electric system. I am far from an expert. You know, a lot of people just call it the magic. You know, it's just magic. Well, I know a little bit more about it than magic, but I'm not an electrician and I'm not an expert in solar power, but I have dealt with this system over the past 15 years. And I will say of everything that, you know, you own a house, you own a cabin, stuff goes wrong. The one foolproof system in the whole cabin has been the solar electric. Rarely an issue. They said when I put it in, after 8 years, you'd have to replace the batteries. 8 years on the dot, I had to replace the batteries. That's it. Otherwise, this has been a great system. So, let's see if I can zoom in here. On the back of the pole here is a conduit that runs down into the ground, is buried, comes into the back of my cabin, and then comes into this utility room. I'm going to back up a couple of photos to the one with the freezer. Here we go. So this box, and this is the batteries, and then the electric stuff on the wall. I thought I had a photo of this, you guys, but I don't. So, but this room is this stuff here, the batteries and the electric panels, which I'll show you. And then over on the side here is the freezer, and then the circuit breaker box is behind the door. So I'll show that to you as well. So all of the power comes into the batteries as DC electricity, which I know nothing about. And what our house is run on is 110 AC electricity, which I know nothing about. But I just know that DC comes in and you need to, you store it in DC form. And if anyone is more expert than me and wants to let me know if there are nuances in this, please do. And then we need to, as we use it, convert it for AC use. Couple of things about the batteries. These babies are from the top. They look like car batteries, but I wish I could show you the height of them. They're probably, gosh, they're a good 2 feet, 24, 26 inches high. So they're these big, long guys. There's 8 of them here. I'm sorry, 12 of them here, 6, 12, and then behind under this smaller box, there's another 4. So I have 16 total batteries, which is the maximum number of batteries that I can store electricity on without increasing all of this white equipment up top that I'll tell you about. The problem with solar, for me, because I'm not living there full time, the problem is not number of panels up on the hill. The problem for me is the amount of storage and the speed at which it gets stored. So let me go forward and make a couple of more comments about that. So the batteries are sitting right under all of this business. This is an inverter, or the piece of equipment that changes the DC to AC power. These 2 black Outback units are backup inverters. This white guy is an overload box, which I don't know what it does, but I feel like it's important because I don't want my cabin to explode. Thanks for laughing, Greg. And this guy is—
You sound just like me, John. I have no idea what you're talking about.
And this guy is the main shutoff, or this yellow cord will hook up to a generator if I need it. I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. But this guy is my favorite, this little guy, that says full. So I thought that was the next photo. So it's a great lead into that photo, but so this is the inverter. I try not to touch it. This is this great little meter that I wish every house in the country had, because it switches between voltage, which tells you kind of how powered your system is, percentage on this side that tells me how full my batteries are. And I kind of run off of this. If I get to the cabin on a Thursday night or a Friday and I see that my system is full, I'm happy. That means I can be there 3 or 4 days and not worry about a blasted thing. Microwave, washer, dryer, anything, internet, any of it. If I get to the cabin on a Thursday night and I have a full house of guests coming and I'm at 55%, then I'll talk about that in a bit. This middle one, though, is my super favorite, because it shows you how much electricity in amps that you're drawing. So this is or that you are, or positively generating. So for example, let me look at one thing here. Yep. So this is a minus 12.7. This was taken at some point where power being generated by the sun. So this fluctuates all day. If it's a sunny day, this will go up to 30, 40 amps, be positive generation through the day. And as you turn different things on, like if you put a microwave on, I've learned over time that a microwave will pull, I don't know, let's say 55 amps. If you have power generation of 20 amps, because it's a somewhat sunny day, and you're pulling 55 all of a sudden for your 30 seconds when you're heating up your coffee, you'll drop down to a minus 35. This meter was the source of so much fun when we built the cabin. One person would monitor and the other would go around turning stuff on and off. You know, the light switches and how much, you know, just getting a feel for what we use in our daily lives and just how much electricity it's pulling. And coming to realize that, for example, although a microwave oven pulls a ton of electricity amp-wise, you might only be using it for 30 seconds. Whereas a ceiling fan, which pulls less energy, but that's on all day, is really going to use a lot more of your energy. So that's a fun little, had a lot of fun with that. This is negative. Also, this little red charging light, you know, will turn red when it's positive. And another interesting thing comes out about solar electric power generation.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm going to do a quick mute. Is that depending on the time of year, you get more or less power generation. And really, really interestingly to me, the time of the very highest power generation is winter and not summer. You would expect, I would expect, that you would have much more and quicker and more generation during the summer when there's more sun throughout the day. And you have more hours of sunlight, so you will get greater gains in your full capacity or your full powering of voltage in your batteries. However, it's the winter where, I don't know if it's the level of the sun or the atmosphere, I don't know what it is, or the level of, I don't know, in the air, it's when the most generation will occur. So that's my little techie part. Here's my overcurrent module, my backups. And so all of that runs along the line and it just feeds into a standard power box. So the other thing that was interesting to me when we built the cabin was it was wired exactly as any other house would be wired. There's a power breaker box. Everything is wired to code. It's all, you know, if you need a GFI in your kitchen or your bathroom outlet, you still need them here. If power did come to the cabin at some point in the future, I could literally disconnect the circuit breaker from all the solar equipment, hook it up to a power line, and I would be set. I don't know what I was expecting when I went down this path, but I just found that really curious and interesting personally. And here's my backup generator sitting next to the freezer. So this isn't terribly large. This is maybe oh, I don't know, whatever, a small carry-on suitcase maybe. I think I've used this once in 5 years. I go up from mid-May until mid-October. During the summer, absolutely no problem most weekends, or even if I'm there for extended periods of time because there's a lot of sun. Where it gets dicey is after about September 15th and before maybe, June 1st, where there's just less sun. So that big yellow cord on the wall just plugs right into this guy, and you sit this right outside the door, and poof, in no time you're powered back up. A lot of people up near me and who are living off the grid or partially off the grid will hardwire a generator, either gas powered or liquid propane fired, so that they never have to worry about energy levels. If it's down, use whatever you want as often as you want. Once it gets down, it'll just kick the generator on up by your garage someplace and, just repower the system. I didn't want to do that. When we were putting this in, I was just so surprised that it was even possible. And B, there was just, the point of pride of being able to live in this way for extended periods of time without using gas or propane. Now I have propane for my gas stove, the washer dryer. Let's go back here to this wall photo with here, this little guy is an instant hot water heater. So, and I have 2 small gas fireplaces that would never heat the place in a million years, but they're nice for ambiance. So it's not that I'm completely fossil fuel independent, but I'm 99%. All right. So that brings us to the solar system number 2, and that's these guys. Here's my close-up photo I told you about. So these are solar heating panels. The solar electric panels, take sun, and through wiring, like you can literally see if you've ever looked at a solar panel up close, there's these small little guys that are built into larger guys that are up on your post, but you can see the wires. These things don't have wires. These have copper tubing. So the copper tubing runs up and down. It's hooked to that Wurzbo plastic piping that you'll see in new construction. It's pressurized with antifreeze. So the term in solar industry is water, even though it's antifreeze. The water won't freeze. And the sun literally hits the panels. It heats it, and then it starts to circulate for whatever purpose you have. So I have 7 of these up on the roof of my garage. Inside the garage is, so here's the pipes. You can see even that they're a little pink from the antifreeze. There's a bunch of messy wires that I wish were neater, but that's just my desire to be a neat person. Then there's this is a pump. And this guy, I find, this didn't enter the scene until about 5 years ago. This is called an aquastat. What was happening prior to my little aquastat was that when the sun hit the panels, this would start to circulate the antifreeze water into my floor system and into my water tank. And on the colder months, basically what it was doing is it was circulating very hot water in the summer when I didn't need it. And it was air conditioning the cabin when I did need it. The aquastat solved all of that because now the pump does not turn on until the temperature is 140 degrees. So the sun can hit this all day long, but if it's a really cloudy day and it never hits 140, I'm not pushing cold water into my cabin and the floor system that I'll show you. Once it hits 140, then it starts to circulate, and then it goes from there. So it pumps this all through the back of my garage. Those pipes get insulated to, they go through there. They go into this super fancy Danish made underground solar piping. that super insulates those smaller pieces of plastic piping so that when this is run, I think my garage, gosh, it's a good, I don't know, 200 feet from the cabin. It's up the hill a ways. And so this is going through colder ground and you want to maintain the amount of heat possible. And what the solar guys go to is this Danish made tubing. Somewhere, although I couldn't find it, I have a picture of me and the pickup I was driving at the time with this stuff coming off the back, which I personally drove from Mora, Minnesota up to the cabin. It was pretty hilarious. And yeah, anyway, here's my cute little trail. And the trail is where this piping is running underground. And it runs right down here into the back of the cabin, comes back up, goes in here and comes into all of this piping that looks familiar to anyone that's seen an in-floor heating system. The difference in this system, however, is all of this equipment on the water heater. This is a standard water heater bought at Home Depot or Menards, but it's not hooked up. So the only thing heating it is this series of pipes that's circulating the water, the 40 gallons or whatever the capacity is, through the heating supply that with this 140-degree heat. I should have a better picture of this little valve here, but this shows the pressure in the system, which you always want about 20 pounds per square inch, let's call it, and then the temperature. So you can see that, you know, the standard temperature in the cabin is, I don't know, 60, 70, 75, depending on the time of year. And when this is running, you'll see this, you know, bump up to 130, 140, maybe even 150 or 160, depending on the time of year. So you guys, for the most part, from Memorial Day until Labor Day, I use zero energy to heat any of the hot water in the cabin. Hot water for washer dryer, for showers, for anything. It's all just heated. There's nothing being used. The rest, once this is, you know, it circulates through here and it heats to the extent it's going to heat, and the rest goes straight down into the floor. And just speaking sort of, but like what happens is through the summer, you know, there's probably 2 weeks where it's a little too warm. You know, it's hot at night. You probably don't want more heat. You wouldn't be turning your heat on in the middle of the summer, but that far north, it's a 2-week period and that's it. I technically can turn all of these off if I wanted to. I just never bother with it. I deal with the heat for a week or two. The rest of the time, I mean, I've walked into this cabin in the middle of October, the middle of May. It'll be, you know, 36, 38 degrees outside and it'll be 70 inside, totally heated. Yes, it's just a really interesting system. However, unlike the electric system, this guy has, you know, when you're dealing with water, in quotation marks, as my solar guy tells me, you're just going to have issues. So if I've had issues with the system and with anything, it's been this where, you know, the pressure will build too much and a valve blows and the solar guy needs to come back out, or the antifreeze unpressurizes, or. That doesn't happen very often. And by very often, I'd say once every 3 years. So this system requires a little more, you know, TLC and maintenance, but to have a fully heated cabin that I never worry about, for me has been worth it. And also back to that, you know, point of pride for kind of living this far off the grid and having it be that warm, that early and late into the season with no electrical cost or heating cost, if you will. You know, there is a cost. The materials cost, you know, the system's cost to put in, the batteries cost to replace, the maintenance guy charges every time he comes out in the middle of nowhere, and, you know, so there are the costs. But the reality for where I am, way up in the middle of nowhere, is if you want heating, if you want electric, it's this or nothing, because there's just no other way to do it. So That's it. The one other comment I wanted to make is when we were building, I went out of my way to hide anything that looked electronic. So, I mean, I do have my, I had the washer dryer and in the back room and my kitchen appliances and everything. But in this cabinet here, I have iHome speaker system. Today we just put in wireless or whatever, but that was then, this is now. iHome, I have all of the electric like fan operating business for the wood burning stove. I have all my internet equipment. I have a cell phone booster, so far out, so remote that there's no cell service. But with a booster that's powered, I get a decent connection. Up in one of the bedrooms, I have this closet, and this is where the printer sits, the wireless broadcaster, and the wireless router. So while I wanted the conveniences of technology, I wanted to be able to walk in and just have it feel like there was nothing. So, and that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you. That's what I know.
Oh my gosh, it's like standing ovation in my house, even though it's just
Really?
me. Everybody's standing clapping.
Wow. Well,
Wow.
thank you. Thank you.
How did you figure this out? And are you comfortable talking at all about costs for those of us that might want to?
Yep.
About it?
I figured it out with a solar electric guy who lived in Grand Marais, who lived off of that 3-mile road that's still paved before you get to the really rough part. He lived one driveway onto the gravel after it turned. So when I said, it's an hour past Grand Marais, he lived about 20 minutes past Grand Marais, and he built his house right as that. And he lived off grid, and he, I was able to walk and see and ask questions and see the panels he had, see the cabin that he had, see what he was running off of it. And he was the one who, educated, I guess is a good word, or just introduced me to all things solar electric. The solar heating guy that he referred me to is over in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And this guy is the guru, has served on White House panels on solar heating, policy and whatnot. It's just a different, he had us actually redesign the cabin. Too many windows, your insulation isn't strong enough. I mean, he said it will work with anything, but you're going through all of this work to generate the heat to get it into your cabin. You want to do everything you can in order to keep it in your cabin or house, if you will. We built it as a cabin, but also as a retirement property in the future. And, 15 years ago, that seemed like a long way out, and it's getting a little closer every day. So, but, he was really, really an interesting, he's written books and he's a thought leader and, lived on a commune in the 70s and, just really, really interesting guy and very much influenced how everything got built. Each of those systems was about $25,000. So the electric, the pole, the panels, all of the inverters, the batteries, all the rest. The batteries to replace are about 8,000 every 8 years. So again, it's not that this is without cost, but for me, back when, I was 15 miles off of a power line. They've since built a communication tower for emergency purposes about a mile from my place. But even today, and it's possible to run power from that tower into my place. But I talked to the utility about doing it, just as you get older, maybe it would be nice not to have to worry about, am I going to run out of power? Guess what, you guys, 65,000 just to run the power line, that 1 mile, $25 a foot. And then you're on a monthly bill with the utility company. So for me, I think this is my 14th season So you start to take something that feels like a lot of money and you start to divide it by that many years. And, you know, with every year, I keep hopefully I'll have it the rest of my life, the price comes way down. You know, the challenge, I have not, although I've thought about putting panels up in my home in Minnetonka, in Hopkins, Minnetonka. I've thought about it, but I'm not sure how long I'm going to stay. And so then do you really want to put that kind of money or that, you know, invest in the panels or this type of system? And also, you know, no doubt it was more expensive because I'm out in the middle of nowhere than if you're doing it in the cities. I mean, I think in the cities, you know, there's a state law in many states, but Minnesota and Wisconsin are two of them, where if you generate extra power through your solar panels, the utility by law needs to buy it back from you at market rates. So not only are you using, you know, generating your own electric power, but if you get a really sunny 2-week period and you're, you know, gone and the panels are just generating, you actually get instead of being charged by the utility, you get money back. Well, I'm not hooked up to a power line. I have no way of feeding back into the grid. So that also, there's no offset in that way. That's the electric system. Very similarly, that heating system was about 25,000. So it was a big investment, but we were building and it got added into the mortgage. And, you know, what can I say other than I've thought many times I could have gone out and bought a $70,000 pickup truck, an F-150 loaded for 70 grand. And instead I invested in power for this thing that'll hopefully last many, many years. So I wouldn't say cheap. I've seen, as I'm sure all of you have, you know, electric power all over the place. I've seen very few electric heating systems in Minnesota, many more in the south part of the US, but, you know, I've seen them everywhere is Mexico, and I'm sure other parts of Latin America. Every rooftop in Mexico and any new construction has solar heating because it just makes so much sense. And it baffles me sometimes why we haven't embraced it more than what we have, you know, but that gets into policy and whatnot. So, Karen.
Oh, my word.
Really? Oh, you guys, I thought this was going to be boring.
Oh, no. And by the way, I mean, what a beautiful, beautiful place you have.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
oh, my word. And I have to tell you, I have cabin washer and dryer envy because don't have a washer and dryer at the cabin,
Yeah.
at our place. But so I have real washer dryer envy there. What do you have to do in the winter? It sounds like you use your place May through October. Am I correct in understanding that? So what do you have to do in the winter time to manage these systems that you have in place?
Yeah, thank you for that's a really good question. I usually the reason I don't use it in the winter is that the road becomes so bad that it's unplowable. I can't find anyone to plow it. And for years, Matt and I had a snowmobile that we would use to get in. But even that, when you're snowmobiling, you want a trail with the snow that's packed down. And in this part of the state, you know, instead of 4 or 6 inches at a time, they're getting 12, 16, 18, 20 inches. And you can, you know, try to get it packed down one weekend, by the next weekend have 2 more feet of snow. And that it's fun to be in there. But years ago, I just decided it's a great place for summer and a beach in Mexico is a great place for winter. And so I just have gotten the habit, if you will, of shutting it down. I usually shut it down, I suppose by Halloween. A little bit of it depends on schedule, what the 10-day forecast is looking like, et cetera, et cetera. I can rarely get in before middle of May. I've been up there, you guys, on Mother's Day before, and it's so far north and such high elevation that I've been, speaking of ice skating, stomping on the lake as hard as I can, and it is still absolutely this much ice on Mother's Day. So it's, you know, it's just a different part. Greg, you go up there quite a bit. You guys aren't quite as high elevation, but you get a lot of the same. So I shut it down, and the electric part is easy. Those solar batteries need to be filled with water. That's a 15-minute job, and I flip the circuit breakers off. That's it. I leave one on so that if I get up at midnight, I can, walk in, turn a light on, and I'm not in the total dark while I'm getting situated. The water, with anyone who's had a cabin that shuts it down, it's a gravity system. Luckily, I sit up on a hill and everything just sort of drains through gravity down the hill. So I shut the water, the process is shut the water, the pump and the septic system off on the circuit breakers so that I forgot to do that this year. And so here I am trying to empty my water tanks, and normally getting rid of the pressure would take 5 minutes. And it's going on and on. It's like 10, 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, well, you big fool, you left the pump on. The circuit breaker for the pump is still on. The pump's just pumping the water out of the hill. And anyway, so shut the circuit breakers down, drain the pressure out of the system. And then I opened both. That blue tank that I didn't talk about next to the big water tank is a pressurized water tank, just to give you water pressure without having to, a lot of older cabins, you turn the faucet on, you could hear the pump running inside of the yard. The pressurized tank, that small blue one, allows you to fill just that smaller tank once. And then, you might not have to fill it again for a number of hours or even a number of days, depending on how much water you used. But both of those tanks need to be emptied. They take about 3 hours to empty. So in the later part of the season, if my rule of thumb is after October 1st, even if I'm coming back up, drain the whole system. So it's a 3-hour process. While that's happening, I'm, tidying up and sweeping or whatever, getting laundry if I'm bringing any home, stuff like that. But after October 1st, then I'm also spinning the washer out with antifreeze. So literally that same RV antifreeze that's in the heating system, you pour it into your washer and you spin it out. Pour it into your dishwasher for dishes, and run that on a spin cycle. You pour the antifreeze down each of your drains, sink, the shower. Once all the water is drained, I flush the toilet one more time. I put about a gallon up on top, which goes down to the bottom. You put that in. It's just this process. You spin out the washer. Did I say that? And then once everything is done draining into that utility room drain in the floor after 3 hours. Oh, yep, no problem, Jane. Nice to see you. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye. Yep, then the final step is to pour about another half gallon down that drain and then walk out the door and hope you didn't forget anything. So it's a process, but it's kind of fun and it doesn't take terribly long, and it gives you 3 hours where you feel like, okay, I'm not in a rush now to get out the door because I have 3 hours, like sometimes I even take a nap, while it's draining, and then get up. So
Wow.
You can see why you go there so often, John. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone that is going to say this before, but if you're in Grand Marais, let me know. Open invite for anybody. Please come out. 2 extra bedrooms, stay for the afternoon, stay for the weekend. I'm open.
How close are you to the Border Route Trail?
The Border Route Trail, the nearest point I can intersect it is about 10 miles.
Oh,
Do you know where Superior National Hiking Trail ends, right at the border, and the border route starts? There's that 270-degree ultra cool rock. It's one of my favorite hikes to bring people on when I'm up there. That's exactly 10 miles from my house. And why I know that is I've had a woodchuck issue. So I've live trap a number of the buggers, and you have to bring them 10 miles away, otherwise they'll find their way back. So I bring them to the border route trail.
They hitchhike back to your house?
I know. Well, they'd have to cross the Swamp River, find their way across the Arrowhead, find their way up a mountain. And I figure if they do all that, welcome home.
Now I'm thinking, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Well, it chucks a lot of,
and-
it destroys your foundation is what it does. I'm all about wildlife, but those little buggers, I need to get them out. So
And you mentioned changing windows after some advice. I'm wondering if you have a picture of your cabin where you could kind of point out some things that you changed
Yeah.
based on the expert advice.
Yeah. So great question. We built it with the expert advice, but this front set was supposed to be much higher. So, it's supposed to be wider. So more windows to the side, more height, and then this part was literally supposed to go up. So as you looked out the front, there's a very nice view, but there is a peak in the front. And then everything else was, if there was 2 windows on the side of the cabin behind here by the dining room, we had planned for 4. So everything was just, his advice was, you're insulating your walls at
Yeah.
R86 insulation value, and your windows are R4 or R6 maybe. So just reduce the amount of window space. That was the big recommendation.
And then do you have special window covering or anything that you use?
Oh yeah, he recommends, what is it? Quilted, when you walk into his place in Stevens Point, it looks like a super dark cave. And I wasn't having anything to do with that. Like he has he will bring these big quilted things down, if the sun is not shining, just to keep the heat in. And that's where I kind of drew the line and said, I'll start the fireplace, or, I'm not living there through the winter. So maybe that's something that I would invest in long term. That was a little too much even for me.
Okay, I'm a total problem child. My husband just is, he's that blurry blob right there, that guy.
Hi, John.
Eh,
So he just came into the room. Could you show a picture of the inside of the cabin again? Would you kindly do
sure.
that so John
you
can
bet.
see it? I told him he's gonna have cabin envy.
Yeah. There we go.
Look at that.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Oh, also one thing I forgot to point out is that the floor is concrete. It's stained concrete. So it just happened. The guys who were standing, and when they came out, we're like, well, we kind of want this color. That he's like, well, concrete is concrete and stain is stain, and we can try our best. But the one we did last week turned out green.
Oh.
Turned out really nicely. Yeah. So great.
But
Did
do you find that there's less mildew?
Oh, go ahead, Ann.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you find that you have less mildewy or moldy smell because you have that radiant heat? That there, how cabins get that funky, cabin smell.
Yep.
Do you find that having
The smell that I smell inside the cabin is, all of it was pine, and it was stained with linseed oil. So if there's any smell at all, it would be a piney traditional linseed. I don't find it overly overwhelming in any way, but every once in a while, someone will come and say, can we open some windows? Just the smell of the pine or the smell of the wood. Maybe I just don't notice it anymore, but there occasionally someone will comment. Yeah. Greg, did you have you've raised your hand a couple of times. Sorry.
Sure. John, I was up there for a week about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was on the gun fun course, and
Yes.
it was just gorgeous. I'm just going to take a little exception with you on going 60 miles an hour north of Grand Marais. I slow down to 40 miles an hour. That is such a beautiful view. The lake is right there. The shore is right there.
It's true.
And I was in Magny Park, which is great. I took a long hike up on Judge Magny Park and had a great time there. But then that was the first long walk I've had in a while. And then I got to the very top, and to see the kettle, the Devil's Kettle.
Yes.
You have to go down 192 steps, 192 steps, look at it, and then take another 192 steps back up.
Right.
I'm not going to do that. That's not for me. So I didn't do that. And as Karn knows, I think I've told you, I've driven up that all the way up the Arrowwood, all the way to the end with Karn to the end. And that is so beautiful up there. You are so lucky. And I just,
Thank you very much.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure which is more enticing, your cabin or the view from your cabin, but I love them both.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
So John wants to know the source of the radiant heat in the floors.
Yeah, it's the panels, it's the sun, the source is the sun, and then it's those radiant panels that are on top of the garage. So let me go back.
And
to
is it a Wurzbo? Is it like a Wurzbo system that you have?
Yes, so it's these panels that have, these copper tubing that in the garage here get pumped into Wurzbo with pressurized antifreeze in it. And this is what circulates under the floor.
Wow.
And, allows for the radiant heat.
Uh-huh.
And this is what Eric sells.
Say
Yeah.
again.
Karn's son, my
Uh-huh.
grandson Eric, works for that company, the Danish
Oh,
company
the
you're talking
Wurzbo
about.
company, no kidding.
Yep. Yep.
Wow, that's great. Well, you guys,
Fantastic.
oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Happy to stay
fantastic.
on as long as, oh, hey, Elka. Nice to see you. Let's do the four-way test here quickly. So if you can take your selves off of mute, the Rotary four-way test to end our meeting today of the things that we think, say, and do. Is it the truth?
Is it the
Is it the
truth?
truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it
Is it
fair
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 to
to all
concerned?
concerned?
Would it build
Build
better
goodwill.
better friendships?
Better friendships.
Would it be beneficial to all concerned?
All concerned.
Concern.
Always chuckle with the lag with Zoom, but yeah. So happy to hang around for any other questions. Otherwise, have a really great evening and fun presentation.
Thank you,
Yep, and
John.
you're all
Thank
invited.
you.
Coming up.
Alright.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
And John, I just want to throw, I have an uncle that lives in
Right.
Grand Marais. So now when I go visit, I'll have to make the drive up to your
Will
place.
do it. It's an extra hour, but worth it.
Sounds like it.